Alex had always found peace in the quiet corners of the royal palace. It wasn't the grand halls or the glittering chandeliers that attracted him. It was the stillness, the calm. As a young caretaker, his job was to look after the royal children. He had done this for years, but today was different. Today, he was assigned to the queen's daughter, Princess Lyra. Lyra was a delicate child, both in body and spirit. She was shy and often overwhelmed by the grandeur of palace life. Though she was loved by her people, she struggled to meet the expectations placed upon her as the heir to the throne. Many times, Alex had seen the princess retreat to her chambers, hiding from the crowds, the whispers, and the pressures. On this particular day, Lyra was to attend a royal function. It was a grand event, filled with dignitaries from across the galaxy. The room buzzed with the excitement of the guests, but Lyra was not excited at all. She had already started to show signs of distress, her small hands trembling as she clutched her dress. Alex could see the panic starting to build in her chest rising and falling quickly with each breath. The palace had a certain pressure about it, a weight that made it hard to breathe for someone like Lyra. Her anxiety was a constant companion, and it had grown stronger with each passing year. Alex, seeing the princess struggle, felt a wave of sympathy. He had been told many times that he was here to protect her, to make her feel safe and calm. But today, nothing seemed to work. Alex had tried the usual methods, speaking gently, offering her a seat, even taking her hand to reassure her. But nothing worked. The panic in Lyra's eyes was growing more intense. She was becoming trapped in the whirlwind of voices, flashing lights, and overwhelming expectations. As Alex looked around, he noticed something. The other children in the palace seemed to have their own ways of calming down, whether it was reading a book or playing with toys. But for Lyra, everything felt like a threat. Alex knew there had to be a way to break through the walls of her fear. Without thinking, he did something simple, something he had done before with younger children. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bottle of soap. He dipped the wand into the bubble solution, blew softly, and a large bubble floated into the air. The soft, shimmering bubble caught Lyra's attention. Lyra blinked, her wide eyes following the bubble's path as it floated and popped in midair. She watched it, transfixed, as another bubble was blown. Then another. The moment the bubbles appeared, the tension in Lyra's face began to soften. Her rapid breathing slowed down, and for the first time that afternoon, she smiled. Alex was surprised. He didn't expect it to work, but there it was. Lyra's gaze was fixed on the bubbles, her small hands slowly reaching out, as if trying to catch them. Alex continued to blow bubbles, one after another, each one floating gently into the air. As the bubbles danced around her, the princess's panic faded, replaced by a quiet calm. The other children in the room looked on curiously, but Alex was focused only on Lyra. He didn't notice at first, but as the last bubble popped, he felt eyes on him. Glancing up, Alex saw the queen standing at the entrance of the room, watching him closely. The queen, her posture regal and calm, didn't say a word. She just watched as her daughter smiled, the anxiety melting away. Alex's heart raced. He hadn't meant for the queen to see. He wasn't sure what to think about it. He knew the queen had high standards for those who worked around her daughter, and he feared he had just done something completely out of place. He had no idea how the queen would react to something as simple as blowing bubbles to calm her daughter. Was it unprofessional? Was it disrespectful? But the queen didn't speak. She simply turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing softly in the grand hall. Alex, unsure of what had just happened, focused back on Lyra. The princess was calm now, her breathing steady. She had stopped fidgeting and looked up at Alex with a sense of wonder. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft, like a secret. Alex smiled, relieved. "You're welcome, Your Highness." As the event continued, Lyra remained calm. The pressure of the palace had faded, at least for a while. Alex felt a strange sense of pride. It had been such a simple thing, bubbles. But it had worked. Maybe, just maybe, he had done something right. Unbeknownst to him, the queen had been watching closely, observing him in silence. What she had seen, Alex could not yet understand, but it was the beginning of something that would change all their lives. The next morning, Alex found himself reflecting on what had happened during the royal event. He couldn't shake the image of Princess Lyra's face as she smiled at him, her anxiety finally quieted by something as simple as bubbles. He had done his job, but more than that, he had helped her in a way he had never imagined. It felt like a small victory, but to him, it meant everything. The palace had always been a place of grandeur and power, but it was also a place of rules, expectations, and pressures. Princess Lyra, as the heir to the throne, felt the weight of those expectations more than anyone. Every step she took, every word she spoke, was watched closely by everyone in the palace and beyond. It wasn't just the palace staff or the royal guests, the entire kingdom had their eyes on her. Lyra's struggles with anxiety weren't a secret to the queen. The queen had always been protective of her daughter, but she also felt the weight of duty. As a ruler, she had to make difficult decisions for the good of the kingdom. But as a mother, she only wanted what was best for her child. The conflict between those two roles weighed heavily on her. Over the next few days, the queen found herself thinking about Alex more and more. She had seen him with Lyra, noticed how calmly he had handled the situation. She had watched as he had blown bubbles, not with any plan or grand gesture in mind, but simply to calm a child who needed comfort. The queen had expected her daughter to struggle in such a public setting, but she hadn't expected such a simple solution to work so effectively. At first, the queen kept her distance. She didn't want to make Alex uncomfortable or question his actions. But as time went on, she found herself observing him more. Every time she saw him interact with Lyra, there was a quiet certainty in his actions. He wasn't trying to be a hero. He wasn't trying to gain favor or attention. He was just there for Lyra, in a way that no one else had been able to achieve. The staff noticed it too. There were whispers among the palace servants about the bond growing between Alex and the princess. Some believed it was a good thing Lyra needed someone to help her navigate the pressures of being a royal. Others, however, weren't so sure. They were used to a certain order in the palace, and the way Alex seemed to slip into Lyra's life so easily felt unsettling to some. Was it too close? Too familiar? But Alex wasn't concerned with the palace gossip. His focus was on Lyra, and the more he worked with her, the more he understood her. She wasn't just a princess or a symbol of the kingdom. She was a young girl who had been burdened by responsibilities no child should bear. Beneath the royal dress and crown, she was still just a child, trying to find her place in a world that constantly expected more from her than she could give. One afternoon, Alex was assigned to spend time with Lyra again. The queen had arranged a small, private tea ceremony for Lyra and a few guests, but the princess was already showing signs of anxiety. She fidgeted in her seat, her eyes darting nervously around the room. It was clear that the thought of having people watch her again was overwhelming. Alex stepped forward and offered her a soft smile. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the bubble wand. Lyra's eyes immediately fixed on it. There was no need for words. She had come to trust him, and the sight of the bubbles brought her a sense of calm she couldn't explain. As the bubbles floated through the air, Lyra's stiff posture relaxed. Her smile slowly returned, and the guests around them seemed to notice the change in her. The queen, who had been watching from the corner of the room, saw everything. She noticed how Lyra's tension seemed to disappear when Alex was near. It wasn't just the bubbles, it was his presence. His calm, steady energy seemed to reach her daughter in a way no one else could. The queen's heart softened. Maybe, just maybe, Alex had a special role to play in Lyra's life. As the tea ceremony continued, the Queen found herself walking over to Alex. She hadn't planned on speaking to him, but something had shifted in her. There was a quiet appreciation in her eyes as she approached him. Alex looked up, surprised but respectful. "Thank you, Alex," the Queen said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "You've done more than you know for my daughter." Alex felt a warmth in his chest. He had never expected the Queen to acknowledge him like this, let alone thank him. But there was something in her tone, something different from the usual formality she used with others. It was genuine. "I'm just doing my job, Your Majesty," Alex replied humbly, his gaze shifting to Lyra, who was now happily chatting with the guests. The Queen nodded. "Your job goes beyond what is expected. It's clear to me now that Lyra trusts you in a way that she hasn't trusted anyone else." Alex didn't know how to respond. He wasn't used to receiving praise, especially from someone as important as the Queen. But he knew that the trust Lyra had placed in him meant everything. It wasn't something he had earned through grand gestures or acts of heroism. It was something simple, something pure. The Queen paused for a moment before continuing. "I've been watching you, Alex. And I believe you're the kind of person who can help my daughter in ways I cannot. I think Lyra needs you." Alex's heart skipped a beat. He had never thought of himself as more than a caretaker. But in this moment, the Queen's words felt like a powerful acknowledgement of his place in the palace, and in Lyra's life. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said quietly. The Queen gave him a small smile before turning away, her thoughts heavy with the implications of her words. She had always been protective of Lyra, but perhaps it was time to trust someone else to help her daughter find peace in the world. The Queen knew that Alex was the one who could make that happen. Over the following weeks, Alex's bond with Princess Lyra continued to grow. Every day, he spent time with her, helping her through moments of stress and anxiety. He had learned that Lyra's fears weren't just about crowds or the pressure of being royalty. They were about expectations, about never feeling good enough no matter what she did. The weight of the kingdom's future rested on her small shoulders, and the world outside the palace saw her as perfect, always poised, always composed. But inside, she was just a young girl struggling to find her way. Alex's simple method seemed to be working. Each time Lyra felt overwhelmed, he would find a way to bring her back to calm. Sometimes it was the bubbles. Sometimes it was a quiet walk in the palace gardens, where the sound of birds chirping and the sight of colorful flowers helped soothe her nerves. Whatever it was, Lyra found comfort in Alex's presence, and for the first time in a long while, she began to trust someone fully. However, the more time Alex spent with the princess, the more he noticed something troubling. There were whispers among the palace staff. Some servants began to talk about the close relationship forming between Alex and Lyra. At first, Alex ignored them. He wasn't there for the gossip, but for Lyra. He understood her struggles better than anyone else, and that was all that mattered. But as the days passed, the whispers grew louder. Some servants even began to question whether it was appropriate for someone like Alex, a simple caretaker, to be spending so much time with the princess. Was it right for him to be so involved in the royal family's life? Was he getting too close to the future queen? The murmurs reached the ears of the Queen herself. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult meeting with the royal council, the Queen found herself in the palace gardens. Her mind was heavy with the burden of ruling a kingdom, and her thoughts kept drifting back to Alex and Lyra. She had seen the way Alex had calmed her daughter with such care and patience. She had seen how her daughter had started to open up, to laugh, and to feel safe again. But she also couldn't ignore the growing concerns among the palace staff. The Queen had always been protective of Lyra, and she couldn't shake the feeling that perhaps she had allowed Alex to get too close. She had trusted him with Lyra's care, but she wasn't sure how much trust was too much. She feared that the line between professional duty and personal involvement was becoming blurry, and that worried her. As she walked through the gardens, she spotted Alex and Lyra sitting by a small fountain, the princess holding a small flower in her hand, lost in thought. Alex was nearby, watching over her, as always. The sight of them together stirred something in the queen's heart. She saw the way Alex treated Lyra with kindness and respect, but also the way he made her feel like she was more than just a royal symbol. He made her feel like a person, not just a princess. The queen knew that it was time to confront Alex. She had to understand his intentions, to see if he was truly the right person to be so close to her daughter. She had to be certain that his intentions were pure. As she approached them, Alex stood up, noticing her presence immediately. He offered a respectful bow, his eyes not meeting hers. Lyra looked up at her mother, a small smile on her face, but there was a hint of nervousness in her eyes. "Alex," the queen began, her voice calm but firm. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Alex nodded, his heart suddenly racing. He wasn't sure what to expect. The queen's tone was serious, and he could feel the weight of her gaze. Lyra looked from her mother to Alex, sensing the tension in the air. The queen motioned for Alex to follow her, leading him a few steps away from the princess. When they were out of earshot, the queen spoke again. "Alex, I have been watching you closely," she said, her voice softer now. "You have been a great help to Lyra, and I am grateful for that. But I must ask you a question. What are your intentions with her?" Alex blinked, surprised by the question. "My intentions, Your Majesty?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The queen's eyes softened, but her words were firm. "I trust you, Alex, but I need to know if you're truly here to help her. Are you looking for more than just a role as her caretaker?" Alex was taken aback. He had never thought of it like that. His role had always been to help, to be there for Lyra when no one else could. He had no personal agenda beyond making her feel safe and calm. But he understood the queen's concerns. "I'm here to help her," he said, his voice sincere. "Nothing more. I care for her well-being, Your Majesty, and I want nothing more than to see her happy and at peace." The queen studied him closely, as if trying to read his heart. After a long pause, she nodded. "I believe you, Alex. But I must ask that you be mindful of the relationship you are building with my daughter. She is the future queen, and I must protect her in every way I can. I trust you, but I need you to understand the importance of boundaries." Alex nodded quickly. He understood completely. He wasn't here to cross any lines. He just wanted to help Lyra, nothing more. "I understand, Your Majesty," he said, his voice calm and respectful. The queen gave him a small, knowing smile. "Good. I will keep watching, Alex. But I hope you continue to be the person who helps my daughter find peace." As the queen turned and walked back to Lyra, Alex stood in the garden, deep in thought. The queen's words had struck him hard, but he knew they were coming from a place of love and care. He had to remain focused on his role and respect the boundaries the queen had set. But he also knew one thing for certain: he would continue to do everything he could to help Lyra, no matter what. The days that followed were filled with a new sense of tension. The queen's words had weighed heavily on Alex. He had always known his role was important, but now he felt the pressure of it even more. The queen's expectations for him were clear: he had to remain professional, stay within his boundaries, and above all, respect the royal duties that Lyra would one day carry. Despite the queen's concerns, Alex found himself drawn closer to Lyra. His role as her caretaker had changed in many ways. It wasn't just about making sure she ate or had everything she needed. It was about being there when the world felt too heavy for her, offering her a quiet place where she could just breathe. He knew the responsibility he carried, but he also knew that Lyra needed him. And somehow, that made it feel right. The princess, for her part, had become more comfortable around him. She was still reserved, but her smiles came more easily now, and she looked forward to their time together. Sometimes it was a walk through the palace gardens, other times it was sitting by the fountain, just talking. Lyra had started to open up about her feelings, her fears, and the weight of her future. Alex listened patiently, offering no advice, just an understanding ear. It was something she hadn't had in a long time. But the pressure of being the heir to the throne was never far from Lyra's mind. The day after Alex's conversation with the queen, Lyra had asked him to meet her in the royal courtyard. The royal staff had been preparing for a grand celebration, and Lyra was expected to make an appearance. It was a task she had done many times before, but today was different. Today, the anxiety weighed on her more than ever. When Alex arrived at the courtyard, Lyra was sitting by the stone fountain, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked up as he approached, her eyes filled with a quiet worry. "Alex," she said softly, her voice trembling. "I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can be the person they all want me to be." Alex sat down beside her, not saying a word. He didn't need to speak right away. He simply let her talk. "They expect so much from me. My mother wants me to be perfect. The people want me to be strong. But I'm not strong. I'm scared," Lyra continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if I fail? What if I let everyone down?" Alex placed a hand on her shoulder, offering her a moment of calm. "You don't have to be perfect, Lyra. You're doing your best, and that's enough." Lyra looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "But my best never feels like enough." Alex took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I know it feels like that sometimes, but you have to remember something. You are already enough. You're strong in ways you don't even realize. You've come this far because of who you are, not because of who they want you to be." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. She had heard these words before, but hearing them from Alex made them feel real. "What if I can't do it? What if I can't be the queen they want me to be?" she whispered. Alex gave her a gentle smile. "Then you don't have to be. You don't have to be anyone other than yourself. The people will love you for who you are, not for who they think you should be." The words seemed to settle over Lyra like a soft blanket. She closed her eyes for a moment, as if letting them sink in. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. Maybe she didn't have to be perfect. She could just be herself. Alex watched her, silently proud of how far she had come. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy for her, but he also knew that she had the strength to face whatever came her way. It wasn't about being flawless. It was about finding peace with who you were, and Alex could see that Lyra was slowly starting to find that peace. After a long moment of silence, Lyra stood up, wiping the tears from her eyes. She took a deep breath, her shoulders straightening. "Thank you, Alex," she said quietly. "I think I'm ready now." Alex stood beside her, offering a reassuring smile. "You don't need to thank me. I'm just happy to see you feel better." The princess took one last look at him before turning toward the grand hall, where the celebration would take place. As she walked, Alex followed a few steps behind, making sure to stay at a distance. He couldn't help but notice how much more confident she seemed. There was still a bit of uncertainty in her steps, but it wasn't the same as before. She was walking with a little more purpose now, a little more sure of herself. The queen, who had been watching from a nearby balcony, observed the change in her daughter. She had seen Lyra struggle for so long, and now, she was starting to find her own way. Alex's presence had made a difference. It was clear to the queen now that the bond between them was more than just that of caretaker and child. It was something deeper, something that could help Lyra grow into the ruler she was meant to be. As the celebration began, the queen smiled to herself. She knew the road ahead would be challenging, but she also knew that with Alex by her daughter's side, Lyra was no longer facing the future alone. The royal palace buzzed with activity in the days that followed the celebration. Lyra's confidence had grown since her quiet conversation with Alex in the courtyard. She was still the same princess, but there was something different about her now. Her steps were lighter, her smile more genuine, and her presence no longer seemed weighed down by the constant pressure of expectations. Alex had seen the change in her as well. The moments of quiet panic that used to take over her life were becoming fewer. Instead of retreating into herself, Lyra was now more willing to face the challenges of her royal duties. She spoke more openly in meetings with her mother, and even the royal court had noticed the shift. Her fear was slowly being replaced with something else, a quiet strength that came from understanding her own worth. Yet, despite the progress, there was still much for Lyra to learn. She wasn't ready to fully embrace the weight of the throne, and deep down, she knew that the journey ahead would be long. The people in the palace still looked at her as the future queen, expecting her to be perfect. Lyra felt the pressure again as the day of the upcoming royal council approached. There would be important matters to discuss, and she would be expected to speak, to make decisions. The weight of it all began to settle on her shoulders once more. Alex, however, wasn't concerned. He knew Lyra had come a long way, and he also knew that she didn't need to be perfect. All she needed was to be herself, to trust in the strength she had already shown. He was certain that with the right support, Lyra would be ready when the time came. One afternoon, just before the royal council meeting, Lyra found herself standing by the window in her chambers, looking out over the kingdom. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the distant hills. She watched as the people of the kingdom went about their daily lives. It was peaceful, quiet, and for a brief moment, Lyra allowed herself to forget about her royal duties. But that peace was short-lived. The pressure soon returned, creeping into her thoughts. She couldn't help but wonder if she was truly ready for the responsibility ahead. Her mind raced with doubts, and the anxiety she had worked so hard to push away began to rise again. Alex, who had been waiting outside her chambers, noticed her standing at the window. He could see the tension in her posture and the way her hands gripped the edge of the sill. He knew something was bothering her. "Lyra," he called softly, stepping into the room. She turned to him, her expression tense. "I don't think I can do this, Alex. What if I make the wrong decision? What if they all laugh at me? What if I'm not enough?" Alex walked over to her, his presence calming. "You're more than enough, Lyra," he said gently. "You've already proven that. It's okay to feel nervous, but you don't have to do this alone." Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "But everyone is expecting me to be perfect. What if I fail them? What if I let down my mother, the kingdom, everyone?" Alex placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to be perfect, Lyra. You just need to be true to yourself. You've come so far already, and you've faced more than most people could ever imagine. You're ready. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your own." The princess closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe him. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to be perfect. Maybe she could make mistakes and still be the person she needed to be. "I'm scared, Alex," Lyra admitted quietly. "But I don't want to be afraid anymore. I want to try." Alex gave her a reassuring smile. "Then that's all that matters. You're not alone in this. I'm right here, and I always will be." The princess took another deep breath and nodded, feeling a sense of calm she hadn't felt in days. It wasn't about being fearless. It was about facing her fears and doing what she could, one step at a time. And with Alex by her side, she knew she wouldn't have to face it alone. The Royal Council meeting was about to begin, and Lyra stood a little taller than before. She still had doubts, still had fears, but there was a new determination in her eyes. She was ready to face whatever came next. And as she walked toward the council room, Alex followed a few steps behind, ready to support her, as always. The Queen, who had been observing from afar, couldn't help but notice the change in her daughter. She saw the strength in Lyra's eyes, the quiet confidence that wasn't there before. She knew that Lyra was ready for this moment, even if she didn't feel completely ready herself. The journey was just beginning, but for the first time, the Queen felt that her daughter might actually be prepared to take the throne one day. As Lyra entered the council room, she took her seat with a calmness she hadn't known before. Her heart was still racing, but now, it was with a sense of purpose. She looked at the faces of the council members and realized that they weren't expecting perfection from her. They were expecting her to lead, to be herself, and that was something she could do. The meeting began, and Lyra spoke, her voice steady and clear. She didn't have all the answers, but she had the courage to ask the right questions. She listened to the council members, weighing their advice and offering her thoughts in return. And in that moment, Lyra understood that being a leader didn't mean being flawless. It meant being brave enough to make decisions and learn from them. The days after the Royal Council meeting passed in a blur of activity. Princess Lyra had impressed everyone with her calm demeanor and the thoughtful decisions she made. The council members, who had once viewed her as the sheltered daughter of the Queen, now saw her as a young leader with the potential to guide the kingdom in the future. Lyra had surprised even herself with how much she had grown in such a short time. But despite her newfound confidence, Lyra still faced moments of doubt. Being the future queen was not an easy task. Every step she took felt like a heavy responsibility. There were so many decisions to be made, and so many people to answer to. The weight of it all sometimes felt unbearable. One afternoon, Lyra found herself in the palace gardens again, the same place where she had first opened up to Alex. This time, she was sitting alone on a stone bench, staring at the flowers in the royal garden. The sounds of the palace seemed far away, and for a brief moment, she felt the familiar pull of anxiety creeping in. Alex had been busy with his duties, but he had noticed that Lyra had been quieter than usual. He wasn't sure what was bothering her, but he could tell that something was weighing on her mind. As he walked through the garden, he spotted her sitting on the bench, looking lost in thought. He hesitated for a moment before walking over to her. "Lyra," he called softly. She looked up at him, a faint smile on her face. "Hello, Alex," she said quietly. "I didn't hear you coming." Alex sat beside her on the bench, his gaze soft and understanding. "I could tell you needed some space," he said. "Is everything okay?" Lyra sighed and looked down at her hands. I'm struggling, Alex. There's so much to do, and I don't know if I'm strong enough for it. I thought I was getting better, but now, it feels like everything is catching up to me." Alex nodded, his heart going out to her. He knew how much pressure she was under. "You're doing more than anyone expected," he said gently. "And I think you're stronger than you realize." Lyra shook her head. "I don't feel strong. Every day, there's a new challenge, a new decision to make. I don't want to disappoint anyone, but I feel like I'm always second-guessing myself. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I fail them?" Alex looked at her, his voice firm yet kind. "Lyra, you're not alone in this. You don't have to do it all by yourself. You've got your mother, the council, and me. And we're all here to support you." Lyra met his gaze, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "But what if I let you all down?" "You're not going to let anyone down," Alex replied. The people who care about you want to see you succeed, not because you're perfect, but because you're you. And that's enough. The princess looked down at the ground, her thoughts heavy. Alex's words had always been a source of comfort for her, but the doubt still lingered. She wasn't sure if she could ever be the ruler her people expected. She wasn't sure if she could ever fill her mother's shoes. I wish I could be more like my mother, Lyra said quietly. She's so confident, so certain of everything. I don't know if I can ever be like that. Alex gave a small smile. Your mother has her own strength, but that doesn't mean you have to be like her. You're your own person, Lyra. And that's exactly what the kingdom needs, a ruler who leads with her own heart, not someone who tries to be someone else. Lyra looked at him, the weight of his words sinking in. She had spent so much time comparing herself to others, trying to measure up to an ideal that was impossible to reach. Maybe it was time to stop trying to be someone she wasn't and focus on becoming the person she was meant to be. I never thought about it like that, she said slowly. Maybe I've been so focused on my fears that I haven't seen what I can offer. Alex smiled. Exactly. You don't have to have all the answers right away. No one expects that. But the people who love you, who believe in you, they're going to be there, no matter what. And so am I. Lyra's heart warmed at his words. She had never felt so understood, so supported. It wasn't just about being the perfect princess or the perfect future queen. It was about being real, about showing up as herself, with all her strengths and weaknesses. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of pink and orange, Lyra felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. The weight of the future was still there, but it didn't feel so heavy anymore. She had the strength to face whatever came next. I think I'm ready now, Lyra said softly, more to herself than to Alex. Ready for what? Alex asked, curious. Lyra turned to him, a small smile on her face. Ready to be myself. Ready to lead in my own way. Alex nodded, his heart swelling with pride. That's all anyone could ask for. As the evening wore on, Lyra stood up from the bench, feeling a new sense of purpose. She still had a long way to go, but she was no longer afraid of the future. She had learned to trust herself, and with Alex by her side, she knew she could handle whatever challenges lay ahead. The road to becoming a ruler wasn't going to be easy. There would be more doubts, more difficult decisions, and more moments of uncertainty. But Lyra knew that as long as she stayed true to herself, she could face it all. And she wasn't alone. With Alex's support, she knew she could rise above her fears and become the queen she was meant to be. The days turned into weeks, and the progress Lyra had made was undeniable. Her transformation from the quiet, anxious princess into a confident young leader was remarkable. She had begun to take more initiative during the royal council meetings, offering her thoughts and listening to the advice of others. The kingdom, once uncertain about her ability to rule, was starting to see the strength in her. And it wasn't just the council members who had noticed. The people of the kingdom, too, were beginning to speak of her with admiration. They saw in her the same determination they had once seen in the queen. But the road ahead was still not without its challenges. As much as Lyra had grown, there were still moments of doubt. She had come to realize that being a ruler wasn't just about making decisions, it was about understanding the people, listening to their concerns, and finding ways to help them. Every day, there were new problems to solve, new crises to manage. But Lyra faced each challenge with a calm and steady demeanor, knowing that she didn't have to do it alone. Alex was always there to offer support, whether it was a kind word or simply being a steady presence by her side. One evening, as the sun began to set, Lyra found herself standing once again in the royal gardens. The peacefulness of the place had always helped her clear her mind, and today, she needed it more than ever. The weight of her duties had felt especially heavy that day, and she found herself questioning whether she was doing enough for the kingdom. Alex was in the gardens as well, his usual rounds bringing him to the area. When he saw Lyra, he approached her quietly, not wanting to disturb her thoughts. But Lyra turned to him, her face reflecting the worry that had been growing inside her. "Alex," she said, her voice soft but tinged with uncertainty. "Do you ever feel like you're not doing enough? Like no matter how hard you try, it's never enough?" Alex paused, looking at her with understanding. He had seen this side of Lyra before, the side that doubted her ability to live up to the expectations of others. "I think everyone feels that way sometimes," he replied. "But it's important to remember that you don't have to be perfect. You're doing more than enough. You're leading with your heart, and that's all anyone can ask for." Lyra looked down at the ground, her hands folding together nervously. "But I don't want to disappoint anyone. I don't want to fail the kingdom, or my mother." "You're not failing," Alex said gently. "You've already shown that you're ready. And more importantly, you've shown the kingdom who you are. You're not trying to be someone else, Lyra. You're being yourself, and that's what makes you strong." Lyra raised her head, meeting his gaze. His words always seemed to calm the storm in her mind. She had spent so much time focusing on the pressure to be perfect, but now she saw the truth in his words. It wasn't about being flawless. It was about being true to herself and doing her best, one step at a time. "Do you think I'll ever be ready?" she asked, a hint of doubt still in her voice. Alex smiled, his expression full of warmth and reassurance. "I think you're already ready, Lyra. Every day, you get a little stronger, a little more confident. You're not meant to be perfect. You're meant to be yourself, and that's what will make you a great queen." Lyra's heart lifted at his words. She had always admired Alex's ability to see the best in people, even when they couldn't see it in themselves. His support had been the foundation she had built her newfound confidence on, and with his encouragement, she was learning to trust herself more and more. "I think I understand now," she said, a small smile forming on her lips. "I've been so afraid of failing, but maybe I need to stop focusing on that and just focus on doing what I can, one day at a time." "Exactly," Alex said, nodding. "You don't have to have all the answers right away. You just have to be willing to try. And you're doing that every day. That's what matters." Lyra felt a sense of peace wash over her. The weight of the future no longer seemed so heavy. She knew there would be challenges ahead, and there would still be moments of doubt, but she also knew she had the strength to face them. She wasn't alone in this. Alex was by her side, and the people who truly cared about her were there to support her. "I'm ready now," Lyra said with quiet determination. "Ready to take on whatever comes next. I don't have all the answers, but I'll do my best." Alex's smile was genuine, his pride in her evident. "That's all anyone can ask for." As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, Lyra and Alex stood together in the royal gardens. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time, Lyra felt ready to walk it. She didn't have to be perfect, but she would be the best queen she could be. And with Alex's support, she knew she could face whatever challenges the future held. The queen, watching from a distance, saw the change in her daughter. Lyra was no longer the unsure, anxious girl she had once been. She was becoming a leader, one who was not defined by perfection, but by her heart, her determination, and her willingness to grow. And the queen, for the first time, felt certain that Lyra was ready to take the throne when the time came.